You probably don't struggle to spend hours gaming or endlessly scrolling on your phone. In fact, I bet you could sit in front of a screen for 2, maybe even 3 hours completely locked in. No problem. But what about just 30 minutes of studying? Yikes, that sounds painful. How about dedicating another hour to your side hustle? Not exactly thrilling, right? Logically, you know that studying, exercising, or building something worthwhile will benefit you in the long run. But somehow, Netflix, TikTok, and gaming always win. The reason? Obvious. One is effortless and gives you instant gratification, while the other requires actual effort. But here's the kicker. Some people manage to study, exercise, and work on their projects consistently without hating their lives. Why? What makes them different? And more importantly, can you rewire your brain to enjoy doing difficult things? To answer that, we need to talk about dopamine, a neurotransmitter often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical. But that's not quite right. Dopamine is the molecule of desire. It's what drives you to chase rewards. Without it, you wouldn't feel motivated to do anything. If you don't believe me, let's look at what happens when scientists mess with dopamine in rats. In one experiment, researchers implanted electrodes in rats' brains. Every time the rats pressed a lever, they received a dopamine hit. The result? They became obsessed. They pressed the lever repeatedly for hours, ignoring food and sleep, until they literally collapsed from exhaustion. Then the scientists did the opposite. They blocked dopamine. The rats lost all motivation. They wouldn't move, wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink. They weren't sad, they just didn't care. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I'm not a lab rat. True, but your brain works the same way. It prioritizes activities based on how much dopamine it expects to get. If something floods your brain with dopamine, you'll crave it. If it doesn't, you'll probably avoid it. This is why we crave junk food before we even take a bite. It's the anticipation of pleasure that drives us. Even if we feel gross afterward, the brain doesn't care. It just wants more dopamine. This is exactly how addiction works. Drugs like cocaine and heroin release unnaturally high amounts of dopamine, which is why people become obsessed. But guess what? Regular activities like social media, video games, and endless notifications also flood your brain with dopamine, just on a smaller scale. And here's where things get dangerous. Your brain adapts to constant, high dopamine hits by becoming less sensitive to it. This is called dopamine tolerance. Think of it like alcohol. The first time you drink, a little bit gets you drunk. But over time, you need more and more to feel the same effect. The same thing happens with dopamine. The more you flood your brain with it, the less you feel it from normal everyday activities. And that's a problem, because once you develop a high dopamine tolerance, normal life starts to feel dull. Studying, exercising, or working on a side project feels unbearable compared to the instant pleasure of scrolling, gaming, or binge watching. This is why quitting an addiction, whether it's drugs, gaming, or social media, feels impossible. The real world just isn't as stimulating anymore. So what can you do? Simple. You need a dopamine detox. That means taking a break from all the high dopamine activities that are hijacking your brain. For one whole day, you'll cut out anything that gives you quick dopamine hits. No social media, no gaming, no junk food, no music, no mindless entertainment. Just you, your thoughts, and boredom. Sounds awful, right? That's the point. Just like fasting resets your taste buds, a dopamine detox resets your brain. By depriving yourself of high dopamine stimulation, you allow your brain to recover, making normal activities feel enjoyable again. Of course, if you're struggling with serious addiction, like drugs, you should seek professional help. But for the everyday distractions, this works. If a full-day detox feels too extreme, try a smaller version. Pick one high dopamine behavior, maybe checking your phone, gaming, or watching YouTube, and cut it out for an entire day once a week. You'll feel bored, but that's the point. Your brain will start seeking enjoyment from other activities, like reading, exercising, or working on personal goals. Now, avoiding dopamine triggers forever isn't realistic, but you can control them. A great strategy? Use high dopamine activities as rewards. Instead of mindlessly indulging first, make it a reward for doing low dopamine tasks. For example, every hour of studying earns you 15 minutes of gaming. Or after a full day of productive work, you get to binge watch your favorite show guilt-free. This works because it rewires your brain to associate dopamine with productive behavior instead of distractions. Personally, I track all my low dopamine tasks: cleaning, exercising, reading, creating videos, and only reward myself at the end of the day. If I indulge first, my motivation tanks, so I always start with the hard stuff. Another trick? Make boring tasks more stimulating. Listen to a podcast while cleaning. Find a workout routine you actually enjoy. Turn studying into a challenge. Little tweaks like these can make low dopamine tasks feel more engaging. It's also helpful to plan dopamine reset days regularly. Once a month, dedicate an entire day to low stimulation activities, reading, journaling, walking, meditating. This helps keep your brain balanced and prevents dopamine overload from creeping back in. Another important aspect is changing your environment. If your phone is always within reach, it's easy to give in to distractions. Try putting it in another room while working. If junk food is your weakness, don't keep it in the house. Small environmental changes can make a huge difference in reducing unnecessary dopamine spikes. You can also start setting dopamine triggers for positive habits. For example, associate drinking water with taking deep breath, or link exercise with listening to your favorite music. The key is to attach positive reinforcement to productive behaviors, making them more enjoyable. One final thing to consider: patience. If you've spent years overloading your brain with high dopamine activities, it won't reset overnight. It takes time to rewire your motivation. The key is consistency. Stick with the detox even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Over time, you'll notice yourself naturally gravitating toward more meaningful activities. Bottom line, if you feel unmotivated, your brain is probably overloaded with dopamine. Cutting back on high dopamine habits, even temporarily, can make normal activities enjoyable again. We're all dopamine addicts in some way, and that's not a bad thing. Dopamine drives us to achieve and improve, but you get to choose where your dopamine comes from. Are you going to waste it on mindless distractions, or are you going to channel it into things that actually make your life better? The choice is yours. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor. Gently tap that like button. It helps more people find this content and start improving their lives. Thanks for watching. Now go detox your brain.